I'm going to try to do a bit of a review. Call it get a sense of a format of like having a lot of information presented to you, and then you being able to see how you catered in terms of like just exposing yourself and where your bias projects you on expressing yourself when watching a film. I was looking forward to Oppenheimer. Trailer looked good. Uh, I get the impression this was targeted for someone else, but like I do not comment. I was just going to put out that they probably are not attached. So I'm very happy I went to watch this because I've always been a fan of the Batman, the Dark Knight trilogy, and I had a lot of attachment with that series. Most people accept that, saying it's one of it's the movie series. I personally think it's the movie series from my perspective that really brought out the director's work, Christopher Nolan, out to the world and make him appreciate how much of a big shot he is for his work. There was other series. I think Flash Forward was another one that related to Batman Begin, and I did watch Don't Care as well, but that had more realism in terms of like world life stories. That's about as much as I consumed without putting some of the joke movies that I saw. I thought would be really funny to point out, but maybe it's not relevant. So I'm sorry. Putting it in this direction of where Oppenheimer was probably directed. In my head, I was thinking, oh, it's likely a bit of banter going on with some of the other new release movies. We all have those. We all know a movie that came out suddenly that came out well. This is targeted for like appreciation of like people projecting their childhood experience out into the out world. I found some managed to find some humor into this, and I already pointed out where my feelings were, but like where I decided to go. Let's start and talk a bit about this movie review where I'm putting out. And I hope everyone else thought this movie was decent. Very intensive, very factual to historical values, and I don't know how much it is all completely fact. And I'm going to be trying to be very good at narrating uh, uh, my feelings about this, but it's going to be a bit disorganized because I was picking different parts. And you guys take interest. I'm actually very happy if you guys just comment and see if you had fun with watching this movie as I did. Particularly, I was going to say, well, one of the things that brought me out was obviously Cillian Murphy's incorporation and the trailers I saw not matching everything exactly directly to the lines later on in the film. But like, it's it's cool. The movie was much longer than I expected as well, and there was a lot of elements I thought were interesting, which were played on a kind of theme, but at the same time they tried to make it their own with the adaptation for the movie's flow to be good. I thought it was decently done. However, the interpretation of how I take it, it still trying to makes me kind of analyze and see it onwards. But that was fun. There was a lot of movies that were also putting into different biases, but they made the action sequence very flow really well. Some of you guys might have been put off by the trailer without watching it, not realizing actually pretty well done. A good job, pretty well done, placed together despite frustration. Let's go on and talk onwards to what I wanted to say. Um, uh, One particular thing that made me laugh, from my perspective, was the implication of like the main character Oppenheimer putting out potassium hydroxide and injecting it into an apple. That scared me too, by the way. But I guess it's an event things of things to come. The intelligence there is saying, oh, he targeted to like a senior that he had a bit of issues where. So I think he's showing some bit emotional ambivalent feelings here. This came into play not too much of a highlight of the movie of where the storyline is grasped into, but there are limitations, and we can make it a fair appreciation that the theory, as cool as we like to say, also is to a point where realistically there are limits to it. And it's like I have to agree to that too. It's just a nice spiel to show and look very nice onwards. But most people, it's unfortunately, selfishly do not care. And if this was an exam, you do have to be a bit polished. But yeah, in a sense, what I'm doing is kind of giving you a context situation of like how high academics have to put a lot of information together and provide a coherent kind of statement onwards to make a presentable kind of like summary of things that's thing. Maybe you can kind of like get an idea in some particular lines where you have to process a lot of information and make sense of it. Since this is kind of a review, there's no particular stress about doing it in a certain way. But like it's just like how much can you get from a lot of info at once. This is a skill in a practical sense. I feel that clinicians still preserve, in a sense, for our professional intellectual outlook to show that we're good. Okay, so um, particular things that I thought highlighted in the movie that I thought were fun to kind of like bring out. Black and white screen, very very old school cinematic reviews of pushing out of like I felt were flashbacks that were trying to be highlighted. Later on the screen are certain characters that were pushed out, particularly Robert Downey Jr. Were later on bring back to a color screen. But like for me, the way the movie was settling, and it felt a bit of a mix. It kind of like distanced it to a past memory from where the sequence was going for the main character, Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy. Thank you for making the effort of that film. That was interesting. Bit hard, very hard on the audience. I feel this is more for people who uh, can pay attention for a long time and take grasp of interest. But the trailer was very exciting. I felt this one had a lot of processing. Uh, the character itself is kind of takes a kind of like there seems to be an ongoing political stance on socialism and fascism. This is why I want to take sense. Wanting to go to the other direction, the other one's going in the other direction. And social for me in my head, if I correct correctly, socialism is a depiction of like uh bring people and kind of like having try to like equalize their fairness and rights to resources in the world. Fascism is kind of like shit. That was gonna be quite hard to like interpret. I'm sorry. Uh, it has government authority government that kind of like kind of like a dictatorship role. Okay, so like they centralize on particular stuff, and they hand choose rather than they hand choose specifically who gets to kind of like get rights and authority over governing people over like it's not for the people, it's for the higher elite who in the government's perspective have earned that place, you know. So like yeah, it's they're on both different stances in terms of political government agenda when they're locating positions of powers. Okay, so what you understand is Tim Murphy is playing the role of an ambitious physicist, and he goes into a kind of role where his specialty he was going into production of warfare. Controversial, as we will say, but like what interests me is like could you talk because like later on the character expresses some form of guilt of like moral judgments of like what he was about to do, but at the same time there are superhero movies. It's kind of funny that Robert Downey Jr. is in there for that sense if you know some of his past roles, because it's a similar stance here. The character is playing a similar role but in a more realistic realism setting. uh, but at the end of the day, um, what I found interesting is his could you project a strong ethic and morality on this character, despite the fact that his engagement or like lifestyle of leisure was women in his life. In that era and setting, my stance is like normally women are normally seen in a manner where they are properties of men, regardless. Comparing to the current era of period, where uh, more women are voicing out wanting to have more independence and choosing that they have their own right to, you know, have their own say in their own life and their own in a sense, identity, which is not in the same line as seeing equalism for, or they want to project, or either more authority or equalism towards men. Things are very different. More opportunities are given to women. There's it also makes it a bit weird in terms of fairness in the world, but like it's not my place to say. I'm living in the same world, trying to get by as all of you. um, um, so let's go on and talk about. I think that you cannot judge the character's impact on moral ethics on his work line in comparison to how he has treated and projected this on the women and romantic attachments that he had in life. Because things were very different. Women were just regarded differently back then compared to how things are now. I say that his work ethics are in line of like as a productive person, it's very what you call it's very fair because he holds loyalty on the people and the staff, and there is a lot of like emotional instability because what they're doing is making a bomb, hydrogen bomb. A lot of elements in this movie where I kind of take a stance of saying, okay, well, that was kind of interesting concept, but I didn't pick it up. The marbles playing into the different jars, unfortunately, if there was symbolism there, I just didn't get it. The black and white thing of flashbacks, but for me as well, it kind of puts out the efficacy in real life ongoing of an ongoing theme that's been going on serialized movies. So you can thank Netflix for that. Yeah, so I'm not going to explore too much on the projection of like relationship that this person has, but it interested me that there's just a huge disparity of that, and at the same time, later on, after the bomb was made and they take their celebration, there was a huge political debate and like justice implication on the character. What has happened was it correct as he produced the bomb. The argument is like the bomb he produced, but the one that they're going to point out is the government who dropped it. So it's like you really just don't hold that much public antagonisms that you expect. It's not really your fault, as they're trying to tell you. Where I stands is like, sure, you could have stopped it, but then this was your job and career. So this direction you were gonna go, it was it'd be very weird for you not to have put a lot of effort and time and direction to finish your projects, especially if you are a person of like high caliber and they expected you to finish it. So the word is like you made it, but like at the same time they're the ones that dropped it, so it's really their fault. Okay. Uh, I like to say I kind of took into corporation of wanting to highlight that it was a hydrogen bomb. For me, that probably doesn't have enough highlight. I felt like that was interesting. It's like, ooh, hydrogen bomb. Ooh, I'm kind of interested in seeing what they mean by that. Was just like the explication, the reactions, and all that, and all of that was just like there's a lot of cameo appearances that made me smile. Previous actors that I recognize, a lot of them actually that I recognize. I saw. I was like, I'm I'm noticing a lot of you. Hi. And yeah, and I do want to conclude, but there's a lot of things that could have fleshed out that was kind of interesting for me in my perspective of like watching this. Um, okay, I think that's it.